Good afternoon and welcome to BDTV on 17th of March. We're delighted to be joined today by Charlie McNeil. Charlie is Associate Director, Business Development across Europe, Middle East and Africa and Capital Markets for White Case. Charlie, welcome along.
Oh, thank you very much, Pete. Thanks for having me along.
Yeah, absolute pleasure, Charlie. And please, for those people listening today, please explain a little bit more about what your role encompasses.
Yeah, so as the title suggests, I head up the business development function for the EMEA Capital Markets team across White Case, and just kind of breaking that down as to what capital markets is. It's around sort of debt capital markets, so investment grade sovereign bonds, high yield issuances, so sub-investment grade type capital markets instruments, and equity, so IPOs and rights issues, etc., and also structured finance, so derivatives and CLOs and those types of things. So yeah, I look after a team across Europe, and we've got a pretty mature practice. Probably 60 or so partners across EMEA. So it's yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Charlie. And I must explain, just for openness, Charlie and I first met, must be 15 years ago now, back at Deloitte. So thank you. Thanks for picking up that conversation again. Charlie, there's clearly a huge amount happening politically, socially, and economically at the minute. What developments and issues are you seeing in capital markets?
Well, I think it would be it wouldn't be right to not acknowledge the tragic situation that we've got in Ukraine at the moment, and frankly the heartbreaking humanitarian crisis that's unfolding before our eyes every day, and that's having a big impact on the markets generally. I think anybody of a certain age who keeps an eye on their pension will notice that things are taking a bit of a hit at the moment. But that, it's not impacting everybody negatively. There's work out there for sanctions, etc. But I think these situations and these shocks in the market always create hiatus, and we saw this at the beginning of the pandemic. So with this uncertainty, everything stops for a period of time. People take stock, they look around, and then eventually things pick up again. But I think we're all seeing that things are a little bit difficult at the moment in terms of the deal flow. However, we're 3 weeks into this awful situation. I'm not going to make predictions of what the future holds, but I think we're always going to see a bit of a hiatus at the beginning of these market shocks.
Yes, certainly. So, and thanks for talking about it. I realize it's a very it's obviously from our perspective a difficult situation. And I know as a firm, you've recently taken the decision to shut your Moscow office.
Yeah.
I don't want to be trite in my comparison, but the 2 years ago, the markets had a shock in a very different form with the beginnings of the pandemic. Was it a similar pattern, and how long did it take for things to begin to find an equilibrium or a balance again across the firm?
So yeah, I think as I mentioned at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people expected there to be a slowing down of work. There was a lot of concern and worry in the market, but frankly, we've had a really, really busy 2 years, and I think there's a lot of sectors that were very negatively impacted. Lots of people have suffered as a result of the pandemic, but I think it's fair to say that the legal sector has been really, really busy. And just to take White Case as an example, in London alone, in 2021, we posted a 12% increase on revenues from about 397 million to 450 million. And that was reflected globally as well. So across the firm, we saw a 20% increase, where we went from 2.4 billion revenues to 3.5 billion. And I think it's fair to say that the capital markets team has been, part of that success. We've been fantastically busy, across all of the market. And in 2021, if we look at all of the capital markets instruments across EMEA. So not all the work that we've done, but the actual market as a whole, there was a 20% increase across EMEA compared to 2019, which I kind of consider to be the last normal year. And I think for me, the really interesting bit is around equity. So equity capital markets have been hugely busy. We've seen record levels of IPOs. And in terms of deal numbers since 2019, there's been a 335% increase.
Wow.
Since 2019 to 2021. So, and White Case is about 121 IPOs over EMEA through that period, making us the market leader in that space. And we also, incidentally, came number one for corporate high yield bonds as well, according to Bloomberg.
Okay. And what's driving that, Charlie? What are White Case doing right? Without now, I must say this cannot be an advert for White Case at this stage. But is there something you're doing differently? I think
a lot of it's down to the market. So the market has been very busy as a whole, and we've capitalized on that, and historically low interest rates. And probably a realization that we need to get, or the markets probably realize that these deals need to get done, so people are pushing forward. But it's also around product development as well. One of the things that we have been quite fortuitous to do is to get on board with SPACs, which are special purpose acquisition companies.
Yes. And
just by way of background, because not everybody would have heard of SPACs, they're also known as blank check acquisition funds.
Okay.
And essentially what happens is a sponsor raises money from investors, and then list the investment on a market or a stock exchange. And then these funds are used to find private companies to merge with and to take public. These deals for us are really interesting because they provide us, I guess, two bites of a cherry. One being the IPO, so the ECM bit, so listing the company, and the second bit is what we call a de-SPAC, where
you unpick it.
So where that money is used to actually invest in the company. So it's been a really good time.
So do you see that trend continuing in SPACs, or do you think it's had its day?
Well, I think it's going to continue. I think SPACs have been around for a long time. It's a bit of a new thing for Europe, I guess, and that's been driven by a number of things, by regulation to some extent. Yeah. But if we look at the US market, I think there were 610 SPACs last year, and there were 35 or 39 this year across Europe. So I think in the US it's a mature market, and they've been around for some time. I think in EMEA it's a growing market, so I think it's going to continue. Like all other sort of markets at the moment, there's a bit of a hiatus. There's a bit of flowing in that.
Yeah. So most people listening today and watching this on YouTube are leading BD and marketing departments at other professional firms, law, accountancy, consulting. So they will be very interested to know what from a BD perspective you're doing to capitalize on this and make the most of it.
Yeah, so we really jumped on this as a BD team, both from a corporate and a capital markets perspective, because of the properties of the type of transaction. It's something that we need to work together on. We jumped on this very quickly. We established what we call a SPAC hub, which was a data center and commentary that supports that data on a dedicated website on whiteandcase.com. And clients get the opportunity to sign up to alerts, etc. And we provide them with data on the market, what deals are out in the market, and what's changed. And I think it's fair to say that's pretty unique for a law firm. In fact, we're the only firm that has done that, and we're the first firm to have done that. And frankly, there aren't many other professional services firms out there that have done something similar. So, and it's really reinforced our position in that market. We're doing the majority of the deals, but we're backing that up also with thought leadership and thinking for our clients. So.
Okay. Thanks, Charlie. And what are you doing? Clearly, you've moved smartly and quickly around SPACs. What are you doing now to look to the horizon for clients and respond to what you see coming up in the next 12 to 18 months?
I think it's really about listening to the client. So, at the beginning of the pandemic, I think a lot of clients were absolutely bombed with client alerts and updates, etc. The slowing in the markets, I think people reacted by keeping busy doing other things, and we just took a bit of a step back really, and decided to, rather than try and push lots of content out to clients, was just to pick up the phone actually and have a conversation and try and connect with them at a personal level. A lot was going on in the market, and people had a lot of stuff going on in their personal lives. No one knew what was really going on, but we found that clients really appreciated that, just picking up the phone and having a conversation with them. And we also found out that they were fed up with receiving hundreds of client alerts, which is good feedback, right? Which is good feedback.
Yes. So looking beyond that now, and you don't need to share your whole recipe with everyone on the line here, but there's a number of other things changing in terms of the professional landscape, a number of other things on the rise, and trends accelerating, partly due to the pandemic. How are you making sure you capitalize on it and keeping that dialogue with clients around those emerging trends?
Yeah, so I think, as you say, Pete, the pandemic has accelerated a lot of change. And the world is in a sort of, an amazing and fast-moving transition. And some of the trends that we're seeing, are pretty obvious. ESG, energy transition, the move to digitalization, and all of these things our clients want to hear about, and they want to hear about our expertise. So at a firm-wide level, we've got a campaign called World in Transition, and basically we're bundling up a lot of themes around those areas. So, as I say, ESG, energy transition, digitalization. We're putting together thought leadership, but also seminars for our clients to listen to and engage in. And we're actually inviting our clients to be participants in those. An interesting last week, I think it was, we had one on digitalization. We had Stephanie Flanders of the BBC News fame, but now at Bloomberg, I believe. And in a couple of weeks' time, we've got another one on carbon trading. And we've got Mark Carney, the previous director of the Bank of England, speaking on that. So
some good up and coming names there.
Exactly.
And when we it may come as a surprise to anyone who watches this, but we do have a chat in advance, and Charlie and I chatted over a month ago about it, and talked about the hydrocarbons and talked about renewables. Something like that now has really been thrust onto the front pages, and it's in the mind of every client we talk to, whether they're in energy, manufacturing, financial services, or they're driving tractors around Devon and Cornwall. How do you then respond to that rising up the agenda for people? Does that then get more attention? Does that then do you tilt more energy towards that?
Yeah, absolutely. And energy transition is one of the industry sectors that we focus on, and it's really important. And I think this awful situation in Ukraine has really put a spotlight on energy transition. And Ursula von der Leyen, in a recent speech, actually talking about the European Green Deal, gave some very clear, strong messages around energy transition and the move away from hydrocarbons and our reliance on Russian oil and gas, which I think is a great. It's a positive outcome from something very very bad, but I think it's great. It's an industry that will provide lots of opportunities, for lawyers and for other people, but it's also great for the climate, obviously. I have a 10-year-old daughter, as you know, and one of the positives she came back from school was, do you know the world is now stepping up more quickly to look into alternatives? And I thought, well, that's one of the things that's trickling through even to primary school level 6. With the pandemic and now moving to the situation between Russia and Ukraine, how is that? I see White Case, and I think it's
quite legitimately as a global elite firm with a really strong US legacy. How has that UK-US relationship featured over the last 2 years? Has it taken knocks? Has it been strengthened?
Look, we have a great relationship with our US colleagues, and we're a US heritage firm. And I think that it's got a lot stronger, actually. And I think we've all been facing the same challenges, regardless of whether we're based in New York or Tampa or London. And I think critically, our clients are global, and they've been facing the same challenges that we've been facing. So it's been really beneficial to work more closely with our colleagues to try and fix and not necessarily fix problems, but help our clients with the challenges that they've faced over the last couple of years. So, and the examples of the energy transition campaigns, the SPACs work that we've been doing is testimony to this. But no, it's been really positive in terms of bringing us close together.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. Until 24 hours ago, I was due to take part in this conversation from Canary Wharf. Then the meeting I was due to have there was cancelled because the person I was meeting has COVID. I think there's still over 100,000 cases a day of COVID. Are we yet in a position where you can, as a firm, you can see, you're calling the arc of the pandemic, and you can start to think about on two levels what working practices look like over the next 6 months, and also where you're going to be investing time and resources?
So yeah, we're now back in the office 3 days a week, which has some massive positives from my perspective. I think there's been some real challenges. Certain people have thrived, certain people have found it challenging. And it depends on your individual circumstances, and the reasons are all pretty well documented on the pros and the cons. Lost time meeting, client contact, IT challenges, etc. But I think for me, overwhelmingly, I guess this experiment that we've all gone through over the last couple of years has worked, and there is actually no going back. However, the real challenge for us is to make hybrid working work. So we're now in a position where we're going to be working from home, but also working from the office. And I guess getting that rhythm right, being in the office and then going home, and doing that on a regular basis, and that becoming part of our reality is the challenge. The consistency, the continuity, and indeed the efficiency of those different ways of working are our real challenge. And we're putting quite a lot of resources into making sure that works for the firm and that works for our people. And we've got external advisors that come in and they're helping us with that transition to hybrid working. It's really exciting. We can make some work.
And obviously some of it is logistical around desk planning and so on, but is it about bringing people together at the right time, or where's that advice focusing?
Absolutely. We've got a thing, and I'm sure lots of other firms have got this thing called anchor days. So when particular teams come in on a certain day to make sure that everybody has that contact with each other they've missed over the last couple of years. So there's some of that.
Just one quick question before we turn to you personally and finish, Charlie. There's been an ongoing flow of media comment around the rise in pay for newly qualified lawyers. What are you seeing from where you sit?
Look, I think we work in a market that's really competitive, right? And there's been lots of publicity around the Great Resignation, and law firms and other professional services firms have had to reconcile themselves to an increase in turnover from staff. And I think much of that, in fact, I don't think I know much of that has been driven by the pandemic. People have had time to think of what they want, what their values are, what they want to get out of life, and that has created that change. However, remuneration is a big part of people's desire to do a certain job. And I think it's an effective and necessary tool to attract the right talent, especially in a really, really tight market where we're competing with not just other law firms now. It's the new economy sectors as well.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
so it's the digital companies, it's the ESG, it is, you know, all these new economy areas look like an exciting proposition, and we're competing with them head on.
Yeah, no, great point, and I absolutely see that in the market. A question that's just come in from Quentin Veal, who looks after Meritas, the global network of law firms. And Quentin's asking, what answers, what solutions have you found most useful when you're trying to keep connections and interactions between the team and also between lawyers and clients during both the pandemic and the global uncertainty? Anything that really stands out above what's already been very well documented?
So, you know, from a team perspective, just making sure that we have regular catch-ups and contact. And one of the things that I've done, I've taken it upon myself personally to do, is make sure that I'm doing it on a one-to-one basis, not just on Zoom calls, because I think it gets kind of fed up with, you know, the Zoom fatigue, as it were.
Yeah.
So from a personal perspective, that's what I have tried to do. You know, as we just mentioned, we've got the anchor days to make sure that people are connected. There were lots and lots of initiatives at the beginning of the pandemic, online drinks, etc., and you know, it's kind of fizzled out. So I think the focus now is just getting people back together and enjoying the opportunity to connect, you know, from a personal perspective. From a client's perspective, I think it's about, you know, making sure that the content that we're getting out there is interesting and engaging, because, you know, we've moved from real in-person events to these to webinars and online. I think that's going to stay, because there's huge benefits from doing that. We've got a lot more access to clients globally, which is fantastic. But it's about making sure that the content is appropriate, that it's engaging, and you know, that it's fit for purpose. So we compete a lot in the marketplace for the same types of content, but trying to make it stand out is the challenge that we have. So.
Yeah, agreed. Charlie, final question. We've raced through 21 minutes in the blink of an eye, and thank you very much for thanks very much for helping that go in such an interesting way. For you personally, you said it's you think it's good to be back in the office 3 days a week. What is it? What's the big benefit for you?
So as I say, you know, having that in-person contact with my colleagues and my team actually is great. So being able to sort of just get up, go next door and speak to some of the guys that I work with is fantastic. Not having to do lots of Zoom calls, which is ironic as we sit here on a Zoom call, is great. But also, you know, speaking to the partners and indeed clients. So I'm very much so looking forward to events starting again and being able to speak to colleagues and clients and other people. So.
Yeah, here, absolutely. Charlie, we always make a point of keeping this to 20 minutes. Thank you very much for making a brilliant episode. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you very much, Pete. Cheers.
Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.